Hello there, welcome to the Saroy channel, wherever you are in the world, and so much love to each and every one of you. I do hope you're doing remarkably well. I'm doing great, thank you very much, and I'm so delighted you've joined me for part 2 of our story. So what we've got here is a very mysterious situation where Douglas has actually experienced a rather nasty beating up at his workplace when he was working on a construction site. He was going over to his car, and just as he was doing that, he was attacked by 3 men. And he's not talking about who it is that actually attacked him or why they did this to him, but by all accounts, he's very lucky to be alive. And it appears that he's been getting threatening letters in the post where he's living with his father-in-law and mother-in-law and his wife and his child Howie. And his father-in-law believes that he is in danger because of the threats he's been receiving in the post. And so they've decided to accept a job. Well, it looks like he's decided to accept a job at Ocean Spray in Oregon. So we're going to find out what happens next. So let's continue with our story. "Even if I run away to Oregon, these people will likely find me," said Douglas. "People like that never go away, do they? They're like the ticks on a dog's back. You can't shake them off." "That's maybe true, Douglas, but in my experience, out of sight is out of mind. If you've moved further away from here, they can't keep such a beady eye on you, can they? They will likely focus on other things besides you. And let's not kid, if you were going to spill on them, you'd have done so a long time ago, would you not? I think they will feel reasonably assured you won't blabber about them. But then you being so much further away is going to create distance between you and them. And the way I see that, it's got to be a jolly good thing." "When you put it like that," said Douglas, in a resigned acceptance, "I suppose then it makes perfect sense." He waved a hand at both Neil and Anna, in an abstract gesture of dismissal. "Now you two get out of the office for a moment. I have a call to make with Claudia Fiorento, whom I suspect has some Italian lineage, with a name like that. It's quite the giveaway, is it not?" "Good on you, son," said Neil, slapping his son-in-law on the back proudly. "You are doing the right thing." It was when Douglas came out of Neil Fauntleroy's office and entered the living room, where they were all gathered together watching television as a family. Anna noticed his face had grown as white as a ghost, and for one horrifying moment she did wonder if her husband had recklessly declined the job with Claudia Fiorento. She was sure she detected a flicker of guilt in his eyes, which suggested he had something to convey that was not good. She drew in a deep breath, straightening up her back, as if she was afraid she needed some extra scaffolding to hold her up when her husband delivered the unfortunate blow. The last year had been tumultuous and difficult, to say the very least. She was used to things just crumbling apart in her hands like a cookie. Was this new job at Ocean Spray, that looked so promising, going to blow up in their faces? "What on earth is wrong, Douglas? Why are you so pale?" she asked circumspectively. "You have accepted the job, have you not, with Claudia Fiorento?" Her stomach dipped with trepidation as she awaited her husband's answer. "Of course I have," said Douglas. "But I told Mr. Claudia Fiorento that we are leaving tonight. He was very eager for me to start working for him as soon as possible. He suggested we leave right away, as it will take us 2 days on the road to get there, with an overnight stop along the way. Some of these wealthy, very affluent people can be a little entitled and demanding. It's like they snap their fingers like that and expect you to jump. I found myself saying yes to the man. If the truth be told, I doubt he even heard the word no ever being uttered to him in his life. He was nice enough, of course, but goodness gracious me, he knows what he wants and he sure as hell gets it. All I can say is I'm glad he won't be on the property, supervising things for most of the time, while I'm manning the fort and taking care of the gardens and the house for him. I would hate to have him breathing down my neck, like the proverbial dragon." "What? Are you telling me you actually told Claudia Ferrento we would leave right now, at the drop of a hat? Just like that? Are you crazy? Said Anna, looking confounded. But we can't. We've got things to pack. We can't just leave like that. We've got to organise everything. This is completely crazy. What's stopping you, love? Asked Anna's father. If I were you, I would get packing right away, he said encouragingly, giving Douglas a wink. This is very good news indeed. Leaving as soon as possible is a fabulous idea as far as I'm concerned. The sooner you get away from Chicago, the better, and there's no time like the present. The way I see it, the less people that know about you leaving, the better. The two of you need to get packing Anna's Fiat as soon as possible. Oh, this is the best news, said Anna's mother, throwing her arms up in the air in delight. I always felt uneasy about you staying here in Chicago with us after Douglas's dreadful accident. I often had a sense that someone had been following us around, watching the house. It's going to be hard you're leaving, but I am glad that you are, for your own safety. I felt that too, said Anna, looking startled. You never told me this, Mum. I've always had a sense that I've been watched. Well, I didn't want to worry you, did I, love? You've had enough on your plates. But I think leaving Chicago is an excellent idea. I really do. It'll be a monumental load off my mind, knowing you're a hell of a lot safer where you are. Of course we'll come and visit you at your new cottage, at the earliest opportunity, once you've settled in, and Howie has adjusted to his brand new school. My advice is to pack lightly. Take the bare minimum if you can. Your father will bring all the extra stuff up in a trailer for you at a later stage. The main thing is you need to leave for your own safety. Anna and Douglas had spent the rest of the evening industriously packing up their suitcases. They had decided to take very little. Anna had woken up little Howie to tell him to get packed. He appeared to be very confused, and through bleary eyes congealed by sleep and a cacophony of yawns, he asked in surprise, What's going on? Where are we going? Why are you waking me up in the middle of the night like this? I don't understand. You need to get packed, love. We're going on a road trip. We're moving to Oregon. We're leaving right now. I need you to hurry up, said Anna in a no-nonsense efficient tone of voice she usually used on her son when chivvying him up to get ready for the school bus in the morning. Howie, bewildered, looked from his mother to his father, wondering if this was some kind of warped joke, but he could tell by their stoic demeanours his parents were being deadly serious. But we're moving. You never said anything. But why? I like it here with Granny's house. I like it here. Sweetheart, I know you do. But we can't stay here forever. We can't outstay our welcome. We need to find a place of our own, don't we? Your father has been given a fabulous new job in Oregon. The owner of a property where we're going wants him to leave for the job right now, and your father has agreed. It's very last minute, you know, but we're going right away. But what about the school and my friends at school? Asked Harry, looking bemused. I haven't even said goodbye to Anton and Parker yet. They'll be very upset with me if I don't even bother to tell them that we're moving away. I know, love, it's very disappointing, but it just can't be helped in the circumstances. But you can WhatsApp them, can't you, and explain why you had to leave so suddenly. That way you'll be able to keep talking to them. And when we come back here to Glencoe to visit your grandparents, we can look up your friends, can't we? Her reassuring words seemed to calm down her rather wilful son, who was not terribly amused by this drastic turn of events. It had been hard for all of them to leave the house in Glencoe that they had shared with Anna's parents for an entire year. Anna noticed that her mother was particularly sad to see them go. She was struggling to hold it together and to fight back the tears. She was trying to plaster a watery smile on her face that did not successfully meet her eyes. Goodbye, love, she said, wrapping her arms around her daughter affectionately. I'm going to miss the all of you so very much. Have a very safe journey. You better get going, or I'm going to fall apart. I can't bear goodbyes of any kind." "Mum, please don't cry," said Anna pleadingly. "You'll get me started, and I'm not a pretty crier. We're going to be fine, I promise you, Mum. Please don't worry about anything. I'll call you when we get there." She had reluctantly walked to her Fiat, climbed into the front seat, started up the engine, while her parents, watching from the front door of their house, seemed so subdued and sad. They both held hands, and they waved. It had been a dark night, lit up by a very long line of streetlights, and with a heavy heart, the family left Chicago behind, like a butterfly flying away from a familiar alpine field to one significantly further away, not really knowing what lay ahead of them on this new, uncharted path. Anna wound up the window of the car to appease her son, even though they were probably now only a stone's throw away from ocean spray, and would soon be disembarking from their ever-so-long road trip any time soon, which was a relief, as every single part of Anna's body ached with exhaustion, most especially her lower back, which was giving her grief. "I'm freezing cold, Mummy," Howie complained bitterly. "I wish you hadn't opened the window like that, to let in all the cold air. Why did you have to do that?" he groaned. "I'm so sorry, love. I wasn't thinking. I didn't realize you were getting so terribly cold. I have to say that smell was just too awful for words. I had to get it out of here. But we're very nearly there, love. Not long to go now. It's been an unending 29-hour journey, which we've divided overnight with a rest stop. But it's been one hell of a trip, and I never thought it would come to an end. But I'm very proud of you, Howie. You haven't complained once. You've been remarkably well behaved." "You better get used to the cold, kiddo," said Douglas, turning around to look directly at Howie, with a warm, affectionate smile on his face. "I have to warn you, Howie. The Oregon coast can get bitterly cold, much like Chicago at times. Where is your sweater? It might be good to put it on." "I left it in my luggage. You said we were going to be arriving at the coast. I thought it would be warm here," said Howie despondently. "I wasn't to know it was going to get chilly, was I?" "You'll soon learn, Howie. When living at the coast with all these cooling sea breezes, the weather is capriciously unreliable. It can be cold at the very best of times. You need to be prepared for all eventualities, so it's advisable to always keep a sweater at hand," his father pointed out. "I don't like the cold," said Howie, contorting his face in disgust. "If we'd moved to Florida, it would be a lot warmer, wouldn't it? Because you can swim in the sea there. The water is lovely and warm. The weather is always good there. Why did we move here if the coast is cold? This place is horrible. I'm tired. I'm sick of travelling for so long. When are we going to get to this place anyway? I feel as if we've driven to the moon and back. It's been 2 whole days on the road, with an overnight stop at that horrible seedy hotel that stank of cigarette smoke and Indian spices. If we'd been on a plane, we'd have got here sooner. I hate travelling by car. It takes forever to get to your destination." "The mind boggles, doesn't it, love, that we've been on the road for so long? I couldn't agree with you more, Howie. You put it perfectly. Flying here would have been much better. Your father did not get a job offer in Florida, I'm afraid," she said obsequiously. "I know Florida is a really lovely, lovely place. We've been there often enough, haven't we? Summer holidays spent there. But believe it or not, Oregon is beautiful. You just need to give it a chance, dear. I'm sure the place will grow on you eventually. I've heard wonderful things about the Oregon coast. I came here once as a little girl, you know, and I had a wonderful, wonderful time with my parents. Yes, the seawater was cold, but that didn't really matter. There were so many other wonderful things to do. And I certainly have some nostalgic memories of this place, you know." Howie glanced bleakly out of the window, of the back seat of the Fiat, his mouth turning upside down into a sizable frown. He stared out at the ocean blankly. "Florida's much better than this, Mum. Everything is so grey here. Look at that gloomy sky. It's horrible." "It looks like that, love, because it's overcast. But when the weather lifts, you'll be surprised how beautiful it is when the sun comes out." The Fiat's engine continued to take strain as it rolled up the steep hilly incline, rattling precariously like a struggling athlete that doesn't know if he's going to make it to the top of the hill without passing out from sheer exhaustion and superhuman effort. The showy views of the ocean waves crashing against the shore, with its fragrant delivery of white spray, would have been spectacular, Anna thought, if the weather had not magnanimously let the side down. On this late, beleaguered afternoon, bundles of fluffy white clouds gathered together across the horizon, while the blue sky had been confiscated by a smouldering grey colour that sulkily brooded like a cranky, cantankerous old man who had decided to spend the afternoon engaged in a long, pouting sulk that didn't look likely to abate any time soon. "Cheer up, Howie, will you?" said his father. "I assure you the coastline doesn't always look as miserable as this. When the weather is fine, I'm sure you're going to have a whale of a time here." "But I have friends in Chicago," Howie protested indignantly. "I don't know anybody out here. What if I hate my new school? What if I don't make any friends?" "That is not going to happen, love, and you know that," said Anna. "You've always made friends effortlessly easy, Howie. You're one of those lucky people that has no problem in that regard. I'm sure you're going to love your new school and make lots and lots of lovely friends. Once you've got settled, of course. Google says we're nearly there," said Douglas. "You need to take this narrow road at the next turning, Anna." As Anna's fatigued Fiat climbed higher up the unenviable hilly elevation, her grip on the steering wheel intensified. She briefly glanced down from their high position on the road to the long swathe of beach sand below that stretched out generously into a long, ceaselessly seemingly unending ribbon that appeared to go on for ever and ever, almost as if there was no beginning or end. And even on this less than congenial, rather grey, cloudy day, Anna had to admit, it all seemed rather prepossessing and quite dramatic. Anna observed a peppering of people, walking with dogs, strolling along the beach, totally undeterred by the disagreeable weather, many sporting sensible parkas and lightweight jackets to keep out the wind. Just as Anna thinks her spluttering Fiat is finally going to give up the ghost, just moments before they actually reach their destination, the hillside mercifully flattens out. She follows the curvaceous bend in the track. There's a sign that points in two directions. The one straight ahead leads to Ocean Spray Manor House, and the arrow to the right leads directly to Ocean Spray Caretaker's Cottage. This must be the estate cottage, which is to be their new home for the foreseeable future. Anna's not exactly sure how she's feeling. She has no way of processing her emotions at this particular point in time. That's when she observes a small dark building coming into view. Could this be it, she wonders, as her Fiat glides down the earthen driveway. This was not what she was expecting to see. The dreary place looks disappointingly depressing, but on this overcast grey day, everything looks rather dismal and forlorn. Anna promptly reminds herself that this is inevitable. Everything is going to appear a little grim on first appearances. When Ocean Spray Cottage swings into view, Anna gets an eyeful of the entire cottage. She notices the stonework is both damp and dark, the windows small and crooked. The once white rough plaster on the walls is a little on the grubby side and flaking off in places, rudely exposing the brickwork beneath. The beleaguered roof that has obviously seen better days is coated with a large layer of spongy dark verdant moss, and the stone path leading to the rather scratched-up front door is cracked and rather uneven, with ugly weeds hemorrhaging their way through open apertures in the stone to sully the path. And there, hanging outside the front door, is a bewildered-looking hanging basket full of dying geraniums that had been denied any water for a very long time. Granted, it is rather unwelcoming, but then again one has to remember no one has lived at the caretaker's property for a while, but the owner has given her family carte blanche to do what they liked with the place. Anna is already envisaging herself with a paint roller in hand, bringing a neutral shade to the outside walls. Even a simple paint job could easily transform this place in a second. "That's the cottage!" Howie pipes out from the back of the car, clearly sounding very unimpressed. "It's horrible, Mum. I don't like it at all. There's lots of moss on the roof. That is so gross. I hate it. It's ugly, Mum. It's a witch's cottage. The windows are skew and uneven, and even the chimney is higgledy-piggledy." "Sweetheart, you can see how grey the weather is out there this afternoon. You mark my words, even a palace would look grim and uninviting in this weather. I'm sure it's a perfectly lovely cottage," said Anna, trying her damnedest to put a positive spin on things. But one glance at Howie's grim expression tells Anna that her son is resolutely determined to hate this place. And if she's been perfectly honest, she's feeling a little deflated about it too. Douglas does not say a single word. He stares blankly at the cottage, giving nothing away. So Anna has absolutely no comprehension of what he's actually thinking. She's sure he must be feeling a tad disappointed. He probably had not expected the cottage to be so old and unattended to. It must have been one of the original buildings on the property, easily going back over 100 years or so. Anna manoeuvres the Fiat to a right angle, where it comes to a stop outside Ocean Spray Cottage. In a jiffy, Anna's husband and son have simply jumped out of the Fiat so fast, like two people with ants in their pants, desperate to get going. But where were they going? They seemed to be heading to the beach. Anna called out to them, "Douglas, Howie, get back here now! Get back here now! Don't you want to see the cottage?" But they appeared to ignore her. She was expecting them to head straight to the front door, but she watches them in abject astonishment as Douglas and Howie, fired by an impulsive burst of ebullience, run across the yard, heavily fringed by lofty trees on one side. Both of them appear to be laughing together, which of course is a positive sign, as moments before they were grumbling a great deal. Well, at least Howie was. He looked disgruntled then, but now he's actually wearing a smile on his face. That's got to be a good sign. Maybe the brisk sea air and the crashing sound of the waves thundering against the rocks has burned up their disfavour towards this place, replacing it with a curious intrigue. She realises they're taking the stone steps that are embedded in the hill, that looks as if they've been there for decades. They lead straight down to the beach. She notices her husband and son are so eager to stretch their legs. She can't blame them for that. They make light work of the staircase, which looks like a formidable amount of stairs to overcome, as it's quite some drop to the beach below. She watches as they become like ants on the horizon, as they disappear from view. She continues to call out to them, to tell them to come back, but her trailing voice is now drowned out by a spirited wind. At least the beach is easily accessible, Anna thinks to herself, glancing out at the ocean stretched out before her, that appears like a grey line on the horizon. She can see spirited waves crashing over collections of sculptural rocks as they gallop towards the shoreline in a spray of white sea foam. The fragrant sweet smell of sea salt in the air is pronounced. A brisk breeze is beating spiritedly against Anna's cheeks. She breaks out into goosebumps. Goodness gracious me! It's cold out here, she thinks, clutching her sweater tightly to her chest, and remembering that poor little Howie is not wearing a sweater at all. He must be feeling the pinch of this chill by now. Anna dubiously makes her way to the front door, uncertain of what she will find when she finally enters the cottage, that carries on its exterior scuffed impressions the marked feeling of abandonment and neglect. The place is longing for a much-needed pampering and makeover. Anna decides that she will be the one to ambitiously transform this cottage. She enjoys a challenge. She used to watch those home improvement programs on television all the time, and has received many pointers on affordable, thrifty ways to make it look as if you've spent a fortune on the place when in reality you've parted with mere pennies. Where is this key, she wonders. She was told there was a hook on the hanging basket. That was where she'd find the key. Anna fumbles rather awkwardly around the dead foliage. Some of it snaps away in her hands. She feels along the rusty bracket for anything that sticks out at a peculiar angle, and then her fingers hit pay dirt. She triumphantly lifts the hugely decorative key into her hand, curiously studying it. It is magnificently decorative. She marvels at the intimate details of the way things were done back in the day. No one would afford such attention to detail on a modern-day key, she thinks. Rather nervously she plungers the key into the lock. The door grumbles and groans as it reluctantly swings open, almost as if undecided whether to welcome her in or not. Anna, with a vacillating hesitancy, crosses the threshold and finally enters the cottage. She's met by the strong, musky smell of dust, but she awkwardly pushes herself through the somewhat draughty entrance hall, across the stone floor, onto wood-panelled floors that creak under her feet. There's a stunning staircase that leads to the upper rooms of the cottage. Anna can see spider webs displayed throughout the house, some that would be particularly appropriate for a Halloween celebration. They give the cottage that spooky, unkept feeling. The furniture is covered in thick dust sheets, which need to be removed. The dust in the air is so cloyingly thick, so incredibly unpleasant. Anna feels congestion in her chest building up, squeezing out all her oxygen. Working fast and furiously, Anna industriously, with a sense of efficient purpose, is driven to open up all the windows to let in the fresh air. Whew! That is so much better, she thinks. She begins to randomly grab handfuls of dust sheets that is shrouding all the furniture. She throws them out onto the wraparound porch, which you access through a sliding door in the small lounge, with its low ceiling and overhanging wooden beams. The room boasts a red-bricked central fireplace that will likely look very cosy during the winter months, with a roaring fire burning away merrily in the hearth. Anna decides the cottage is really quaint. As she takes in the mismatched furniture, a chunky woven blanket is artfully splashed over a wing chair in the corner of the living room. The oakwood shelves, with the mint-green backdrop in the alcoves on both sides of the fireplace, are filled with leather-bound books that look to be ancient. Much of the furniture is a collection of collectible, eclectic Georgian antiques. There is no doubt, with a good clean-up, this little charming cottage, with its 4 bedrooms and old-fashioned vintage kitchen, could end up becoming quite beautiful, and Anna decides quite emphatically she'll make damn sure that that's the case. This is a new opportunity for her family to make something of their lives and to begin again, putting behind them the stagnant, rather stale past. Where are the others? She thinks, feeling ever so slightly annoyed. Her husband and son had infuriatingly still not returned from their spontaneous, somewhat impulsive stroll on the beach. Time was marching steadily forward. The dimming light of the late afternoon was fading, and slowly but surely teetering into the evening. Feeling a nervous trepidation rising up from her gut, Anna glances rather nervously out of the main living-room window that overlooks the coastline. Where are they? She thinks, looking around. The grey, previously sullen sky is darkening significantly. She can see the shimmering outline of the pearly moon, peering through the dark sky, like a reticent outer-worldly round disk. Anna shuffles around in the large cupboard in the hall, and finds exactly what she's looking for. She retrieves a hoover and a duster, and begins to ambitiously work on cleaning away the dust, just to make the environment more breathable, even though the ingestion of fresh air has certainly freshened the place up exponentially. The exhaustion that Anna had felt from a long day spent trapped behind the wheel of her Fiat had been momentarily suspended by her ardent determination to make the cottage feel more welcoming and presentable for the others when they finally did return from their little soiree on the beach. But what was keeping them for so long? If father and son were not careful, they might not find their way back to the cottage without a torch at hand. Anna luckily remembers her husband does have a miniature torch on his keyring, and he has a cell phone torch as well, even though the light is less than satisfactory on that thing. So they should be able to find their way back to the cottage, but she suspects they're frolicking around the beach like a couple of wild, untethered stallions. She knows all too well what her husband can be like. He can be a big child at times. The one thing about Douglas and Howie that Anna knows from bitter experience is that both father and son are inclined to get carried away, easily distracted. Anna can count on her hands 3 times over the amount of times those two returned home late, oblivious to how much time had been swallowed up. More recently, as she was residing in Glencoe with her parents, she had asked her husband to go off to town to pick up some bread for dinner, to accompany their meal that evening. Howie had gone along with his father for the ride. Hours had passed by. Her parents had long since retired to bed, after eating the meal, minus the bread that Douglas had promised. Douglas and Howie rocked up later, about 5 hours late. "Sorry," her husband had said. "Me and Howie got waylaid." She had pursed her lips tightly, so she didn't scream blue murder at them. "Daddy bumped into an old friend," Howie had explained. "They took us out for dinner. We had a swell time, didn't we, Daddy? I had hamburgers and milkshake, and Daddy had a steak." Anna was absolutely furious. She'd have liked to have slammed one of her fists into her husband's cheek to get her revenge, but he'd been pulverized enough already. There was no point in inflicting further damage on the poor man. "What the hell is wrong with you, Douglas?" she had screamed. "I had in mind to call the police. You've been gone for ages. I've been worried sick. I was wondering if you were caught up in a car accident or something. I was going to phone all the hospitals. Didn't even it cross your mind, Douglas, to pick up that little gadget we call a cell phone that you happen to carry with you everywhere, for your convenience, to tell me that you'd be back later?" Her husband had guiltily glanced down at his cell phone to look at the time. He had whistled in astonishment. "Sorry, love. I had no idea we were this late. I felt like we were gone for just minutes, but it was obviously hours." Now, like an old record playing the same old tune, her husband and son were performing the same old charade again. But Anna refused to worry about them. She knew only too well what they were like, and after the long drawn-out road trip, she was too frayed at the edges to actually care. She knew she was close to flopping down on the bed like a rag doll and falling into a deep, blissfully ignorant sleep, where she could be contained in the apathetic world of her dreams. And right now, that felt like a welcome relief for her. Moments later, very thankfully, the door of the cottage swung open. Anna could hear the shuffle of feet, the mumble of voices, the trill of happy laughter. She drew in a relieved breath. They must be home, she thinks. She hears her son call out, "We're back, Mummy! We're back from the beach!" Howie bullets excitedly through the cottage, like a frenzied dog that hasn't seen his owner in an absolute age. Finally he finds his mother. She can tell by the animated look on his face that he's burning to tell her something. "This place is amazing, Mum! Absolutely amazing! I love it here! I love it!" he said, sounding breathless. "You're never going to believe what happened to me, Mum! I still can't believe it happened! The rock pools on the beach, they're brilliant! They're brilliant! They're so clear! I saw a starfish! I saw a sea anemone! I saw an octopus, Mum!" "Sounds wonderful," said Anna. "I'm listening. Go on, tell me what happened. I see you're bursting to tell me, so spill." "We went on the beach, walking, didn't we, Dad? Dad got talking to an old lady called Prt2of4. She was a very nice old lady, wasn't she, Dad?" "That's absolutely right," Douglas agreed. "Very nice old lady she was too. Lived in these parts for years and years. She's living in her old family home that she grew up in as a little girl, on the beach not too far from here. She says this is an absolutely idyllic location to live. This stretch of coastline, she believes, is the best. When the sun's out, apparently the views over the ocean are absolutely breathtaking. She says there was a caretaker living here at Ocean Spray Cottage about 1.5 years ago, but the couple left the place in a hurry, without even giving their notice to Mr. Fiorentino. The bad news is it seems that the Fiorentinos have had dozens of caretakers over the years here at Ocean Spray Cottage. None of them stayed for very long. They seem to all make a hasty retreat, without any rational rhyme or reason, I believe. This is very odd. You called him Fioretta, now you're calling him Fiorentino. What is it, love? Does it really matter? I don't understand Italian names. They're impossible to pronounce. I'll just call him whatever I'll call him. It sounds so ominous, doesn't it, love? Said Anna, pulling a disappointed face. I mean, all these caretakers leaving like this. This she didn't want to hear. Did this Mrs. Onassis give an explanation, a plausible one, as to why all these caretakers made such a hasty retreat from the cottage? I mean, do you think it's your boss? You suggested he might be a taskmaster. Did he drive them all away by demanding too much of them, I wonder? She asked gingerly. No, it was nothing like that, said Douglas, his brow furrowing in perplexement. That's the funny thing. When I broached the subject, well, it seemed a delicate one, I have to say, to try and get her to tell me what had made the caretakers leave, Mrs. Onassis became ambiguously evasive. She promptly changed the subject, which I thought was profoundly odd. But this woman could talk the leaves off a tree. But to be fair, she was a very interesting person. Her conversation was not mediocre. She's one of these people that you could listen to for hours on end and never get remotely bored. She sounds intriguing. I look forward to meeting her. I'd like to meet her, I really would. I don't doubt that if she lived here for so many years, she could give me a few pointers about schools and good eating places in this area. Well, Daddy was talking with this old lady for a long time, said Howie, interjecting, and rolling his eyes. You know what Daddy's like, Mummy. He can talk and talk, but this woman was 1,000 times worse. She could talk more than Daddy can. Oh dear, said Anna, unable to suppress a giggle. It was like two parrots getting together, was it, Howie? She said, giving her husband a mischievous wink. Her anger towards her husband and son had dissipated. She was glad to see them looking so radiantly happy. She hadn't seen Howie looking so freshly fired up for a long time, and seeing him like this was a promising start. It would seem over the last year, after Douglas had begun the long journey of recuperating from all his injuries, the harrowing effects of the inexplicable incident had taken its withering toll on absolutely everyone. For a while Douglas had slipped into a deep depression, and his dark moods and snappy demeanour had affected Howie, who had been described by the teachers as becoming increasingly withdrawn, which had been a worry for Anna, as Howie had always been gregariously expressive. So to see a glimmer of the more ebullient Howie resurfacing again was reassuring. Maybe moving here to the Oregon coast had been a blessing in disguise after all. Well, said Howie, I knew Daddy was talking to the old lady for far too long, and I was getting really bored. I decided to go to the rock pool myself. Daddy didn't even know. He didn't even notice I was gone, 'cause he was so busy talking and talking, said Howie, chuckling. Howie, listen to me. You know I'm not happy about what you did, said Douglas, reprimanding his son. I told you to stick with me on the beach, but you disobeyed me. But, Dad, I wasn't going to drown. I can swim, you know, and I'm not a baby anymore, and besides I wasn't going too far away from you. I could see you from the rocks. That is not the point, Howie. Your father makes a very good point. It was very naughty and mischievous of you to wander off like that. You should have listened to your father. You should have remained at his side, even if this woman was talking too much. We're new to this part of the world, Howie. We've got a lot to learn about living here. It's a great deal of adjustment. Besides, it was getting dark. It was late afternoon. You could have got hopelessly lost. From what I can see, there's a large stretch of beach out there that goes on for many miles. There's lots of wooded areas around here as well, so it can be incredibly confusing. Anyway, go on with your story, Howie. You went to the rock pool, and what happened next? she said, waiting for her son to predictably tell her about the creatures he had lightly seen in the rock pool. She had enjoyed similar discoveries herself when she was a little girl, but she had not prepared herself for what Howie would tell her next. "It was amazing, Mum! Absolutely amazing! The rock pools were so plentiful, Mum, full of baby fish, interesting-looking things. It was getting darker, but I could still see clearly. I was lying flat over the rocks, Mummy, my legs outstretched. I peered into the water and I was looking at all the sea creatures. And then, Mummy, I knew something was watching me. I could see a flash of a shadowy silhouette in the water, and I thought for a second I'd seen a face. I looked up, Mummy, and I saw him. Can you believe it? I actually saw him, Mummy." "You saw what, Howie?" asked Anna. "You're not being very clear, love. Who exactly did you see, or what did you see?" "I saw a Bigfoot. He was looking right at me, Mummy. He was really big, covered in long, dark hair. He had nice eyes. I couldn't believe it, Mummy, 'cause I didn't know that Bigfoots could actually talk, but he spoke to me. Not loudly like you and Daddy talk. He talked to me in my head. I heard his voice, Mummy. He had a very nice deep voice. He said, 'So you're living up there?' He pointed at Ocean Spray Cottage, Mummy. He said, 'You moved in today. I heard you were coming. The old lady told me you were on your way.'" So there we are. That is the end of part 2 of our story. Part 3 is tomorrow night. I look forward to you joining me then. Until next time, goodbye and good night.